Welcome back. We're moving into our second conversation for today, where we find out more details about a special training that's going to take place with children 5 to 12 years old, helping them to return to happiness. We have with us at this time Urania Joseph, who is the facilitator or consultant for UNICEF. We have Kerry, who's the CEO in the Ministry of Local Government. And we have Dr. Susan Kasedde, who is the UNICEF Belize representative. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
The return to happiness. That is quite a task. So I want to start off with a comment from you, Dr. Kasedde. Obviously, UNICEF has been very busy of recent, meeting with a lot of children and working with other government sectors as well. Let's talk about the scope of the training and workshops that have been taking place and how the psychosocial one fits in.
Okay. Good morning, Malini, and thank you so much for having us. UNICEF has been busy, and that's, I think, a reflection of the wide range of needs that, that exist for children. Last week we came out of a week-long training with child members of the Children's Advisory Boards. It was an exciting week, preparing to hear from them about their concerns and how they would like us to communicate about them. This week, we're turning to a week-long training on return to happiness, which is really an approach to working with children to help them express their feelings following an experience of trauma. So this week, Urania and her team and CEO Belisle and representatives from the Ministry of Human Development, but also local government, Ministry of Health, and other ministries will be working with participants from these different sectors who work with children to train trainers on this methodology, so that we have better capacity in Belize to support children as they respond to disasters, particularly mindful of the time in the year that we're in, going towards well into the rainy season.
When you look at Belize City, for instance, and the degree of crime and violence that we're faced with on a day-to-day basis, in a case, for instance, where there is a murder and the victim leaves behind a family, he has young kids, let's say within the ages either a newborn or fairly young, let's say 12, 13 years old. What I have noticed is the fact that a lot of these young kids are exposed to this kind of trauma or this kind of shock in their life. And I'm not sure that they have been given the proper facility, if I may, for them to be able to express how they feel about having lost someone to this particular kind of an instance. Is this to say then that you are now on the cusp of training people that will be able to then be able to deal with these kids in this particular kind of a situation?
Perhaps I can share that this initiative, this training component is really part of a larger program that the ministry started with UNICEF back in about 2014. And that the objective of that is called the Sustainable Child-Friendly Municipality Initiative. And it was really about creating safe spaces for children. So that what also happened is that it gave the children in the communities a voice to be able to express what their concerns are, what kind of environment that they would want to live in, so that the leadership at the municipal level and at government level can be more responsive. Now, this training in particular speaks to these kinds of one-off incidents, these kinds of traumatic events that maybe would have been glossed over in a larger program. So the participation at this level, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, our ministry, CIMO, is an attempt to further institutionalize the kind of training that would be required in the long term, not only for those participants, which may be about 15 at this time, but also for the long term, so that those who are trained can further train, and then in time we could have a larger team of experts or trained individuals who can respond to the kinds of traumas that you're speaking to. So yes, in effect, I'd say that this is a step in the direction of treating that kind of situation in our society.
I think that's a wonderful point that Isani made, because oftentimes I think the definition of trauma, sometimes some people have a very fixed perception as to what it is, whether it's disaster related, probably some sort of loss, and even crime and violence. Urania, let's talk a bit about how the trauma is defined and how it impacts children if left unchecked.
Because the perception of adults and the way children internalize and express trauma is totally different from that of adult and adolescents. And it may be something that they would suppress, and throughout the years as they grow older, it would sort of exhibit in a different way, maybe in violence itself and their interaction with their friends. The return to happiness does create that opportunity for the children to express those experiences, though it be through natural disasters, violence, or man-made disasters. They're taken through guided plays, so they can express themselves through drawings, through puppet storytelling, and it becomes the responsibility of the adult so that they can sort of make that observation in terms of how the children express themselves and request further in-depth psychological support for the children. So the return to happiness actually targets children.
Yes.
That space that's not usually created for the children to express themselves, the return to happiness does that. So it's now left to the agencies, the Department of Human Services, local government, and other child protection agencies to come together and actually organize themselves. So you have a pool of trained individuals that will be able to pass on the knowledge and assist children further. And I must say over the years that UNICEF has been a champion in that cause. In St. Lucia, UNICEF was the one who introduced the program to St. Lucia. And in Belize, what you have going, you have the local government authority working in partnership with UNICEF. So that means the scope and the capacity of knowledge in the program would be more enhanced.
Let me ask a question, because since there's been no formalized system, I know, for example, the Red Cross goes in after a storm and does some psychosocial support. Some schools have initiatives in place as well. But what is the window of opportunity that you have to really help a child cope with trauma? What is the advisable best time to be able to work with them?
I think that's a really important question. It builds on what my colleagues have been saying. The window of opportunity is now. And that's, I think, the principle behind this methodology, Return to Happiness, and what CEO Belisle was talking about. It means that we have to build the capacity in every sector that has frontline staff, service providers who come in contact with children, to work together to support parents, to create an awareness around the importance of thinking about children now, being prepared now, so that when an instance of adversity or trauma occurs and a child is a witness or is affected, we know what to do. We start building resilient children now through the way we communicate with them, the way we include them in our, in our activities, the way we empower them to prepare for adversity. And so the Return to Happiness methodology, although the framing is around disaster, preparedness and response to trauma, it really is about the preparedness and what we do now to get ready.
Now, for some parents, I think part of what often takes place is that they feel if they do not tell the children what is happening, that they're sparing the child of experiencing trauma. So if there is perhaps gunshots, or somebody was murdered on the street and they try to shield them from it, or they make plans for disasters or coping with loss without the children, that they're sparing the children of any potential trauma. Is that the case?
We've seen that, and it sometimes does occur. However, it is best if the children are told and they are included in the planning. Because our experience in St. Lucia is that in a certain community in 2014, when the Return to Happiness program was introduced to that community, and we brought in the children, because the program is supposed to be implemented with for the first 48 hours after any trauma. Right. Anything thereafter is regression. So you bring back the children to that experience. So it's best you deal with it right away. And we took the children in and we had them to do their drawings and what have you. And what the children drew was something totally different from what existed during the disaster. It was something of crime, shooting, the police, this and all sorts of things. So it actually, they had these feelings. Those experiences were suppressed. And maybe it's a case the parents said, okay, it's just the police, it's just shooting. But they had those suppressed feelings. And they were able to bring it out and express it in their drawings. So it's best we be honest with the children and we seek that assistance necessary. Now the program is structured in such a way that there's one day for orientation for the parents. So we bring in the parents and we do an orientation session with them. The children are selected through the Ministry of Education, local government, human services, and other child protection agencies. And we bring the parents in and we ask some specific questions as to the child's behavior after the trauma, what noticeable change in behavior that the parents observes, and that is documented and we are able to work with the children then. And that in itself facilitates the additional support, the more in-depth psychological support, maybe the one-on-one counseling, maybe building resiliency between the child and the family. So all of that, the Return to Happiness creates that opportunity to do that.
And maybe we can just add that when you look at this particular training in the broader scope of what the child-friendly municipality effort is all about, it really brings children into the room where the decision makers are. And that's one of the unique features we feel about the program that UNICEF has brought to us, in that policymakers are listening. In each municipality you have a child advisory board that brings children into the room to speak about their experiences, and oftentimes you find that what is being said to you are things that you perhaps would not have thought of in your own self. So that is really where the dialogue starts, and the empowerment feature is where the children now feel that their voices are being heard, and they have a say in how the park should look in their community. And that is the kind of thing that we think piggybacks on a program like this, and hopefully in the long term will start to change our communities and how our children are treated in those communities.
Now, I think, I'm glad you brought that up, because we had a conversation with one of the child advisory boards, maybe it was for San Ignacio or Belize, I'm not sure. But I do recall, it was very interesting, the perspectives that children share, which is normally the case. We see things one way and they see things a totally different way. But they talked about safety quite often. And when I think trauma, I think of lack of security, lack of safety in some way, whether in my own family or in an external factor. And I know that was part of what was spoken about, but as UNICEF or even as the frontline persons, there's very limited control over what is taking place in the wider societies. So I asked that question, kind of tagging back to what Isani said earlier. We know there is a situation of crime and violence in this country, and just watching the news can be a traumatic experience for children sometimes, or going on social media and seeing something as well. How do you work with the respective ministries to develop, I guess they'd be like emergency crews to kind of respond even before invited? So if there's a community that had a shooting at midday in front of a school, is there somebody who will actively engage that community and the children in that community to respond? Or will it be left up to the individual trained persons to develop that mechanism?
Do you want to talk about your ministry?
Yeah, I was just going to say that the approach primarily from the ministry's perspective has been to involve municipalities at the mayoral level. So that once you have municipality buy-in, we think then it provides a platform for you to bring in the other line ministries. So for instance, in this training, we have the Ministry of Health, we have the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Human Services, and those are the ministries that would then be able to more appropriately design strategies to have the kind of intervention that you're speaking to, so that if we look at what can prevail in the long run, we are getting information from the ground up, and then the ministries are now looking at it from a broader perspective, and hopefully, as time goes by, we're able to even expand the range of services that can be provided to children. But in the initial instance, you know, taking the simple example, we had a workshop. This is last week in the workshop. You had a young lady who shared with us that mental issues, depression, anxiety, are issues that they face. And it's interesting because when we were looking through the menu of issues that were to be discussed, it was not on the menu, but it was raised. So that it is this kind of a back and forth, discussion is what is shaping how we now go about approaching the issue of managing what we consider to be traumatic, or maybe what we did not even perceive to be as traumatic in the earlier instances. So, I think it's moving towards institutionalization.
Will there be a feature that would allow for the measurement of the effectiveness of this kind of a training?
So yes, so what we would like to see is that the partners that we're going to meet with, the different sectors that we're working with this week, will actually roll out the training, that there will be follow-up training activities. CEO Belisle mentioned that they will train a range of other actors so that we expand. The other day, I think last week on Friday, we were talking with Urania about the experience in St. Lucia, where they went from training just a handful of people initially and now to having I think close to 250 trained personnel out and accessible to the community. So we have a similar hope for Belize, that we will measure the number of events that are supported by the different ministries, the number of staff that are trained in the different ministries to pre-position resource persons in the different sectors to start building our capacity. But we also would like to see, as part of the sustainable child-friendly municipalities, that children themselves are now included in these events, so that they can bring their own perspective and advise and help each municipality to really tailor the training to address the issues that the children themselves are experiencing. So we're looking at quality, we're looking at scale, and we're looking at the timing so that we achieve impact.
So the Return to Happiness program is an added program to what obtains in Belize. All the child protection agencies, for example, in St. Lucia, the Department of Human Services is the government agency responsible to step in a case that you just described. However, the Return to Happiness program is just an added strategy that is utilized. So if you use one strategy that you're accustomed with, and you may use it for a particular grouping or a particular incident that would occur with a child, you could probably now introduce the Return to Happiness program. So we're hoping that at the end of the training in Belize, that the child protection agencies would see it as an added enhancement of knowledge and strategies to deal with children pre-post disasters and any violent experiences they may have.
Now, you're starting off training how many people, you said? 15? Is that what we heard?
25.
25?
Yes.
Okay. And that there is a timeline in place to be able to have these trainers go out and train additional persons. How do you work with this particular group, the first group, to ensure that the program, which is obviously something already structured, is culturally sensitive as well? In other words, St. Lucia might be more similar to Belize because of Caribbean roots, but understanding that perhaps going into a community in Toledo will have different nuances than going into a community in Cayo.
We're hoping that the selection of participants for this leg of the training would be from various communities and agencies. So they now would be responsible to sort of develop their own plans to roll out that is culturally accepted, culturally friendly. And we're hoping that through NEMO, I'm not too sure if the NEMO is set up similar as to what obtains in St. Lucia, but in NEMO we have community disasters committees. So they would be aware as to the culture that is accepted in that particular community. So based on that, we're hoping that the participants that would be trained for the next 5 days would be of that sort of capacity to be able to identify the individuals that will be able to work with those communities. However, UNICEF has been promoting culturally accepted material
Okay.
So that would also be the responsibility of the said agencies, the Department of Human Services, local government, and NEMO.
One of the ways how the ministry has attempted to ensure that these kinds of interventions are responsive to the communities is not only having involvement at the municipal level, but across all of these programs are tailored to each community. And what comes out of a lot of this is strategic plans, so that the experience being learned and the plans that are being made are then converted to a strategic plan for each municipality. And so that as the municipalities move forward, we are confident that it has captured the essence of the community and the actors within those communities, so that not only is it community responsive, but there's a level of buy-in that we propose to achieve in the very, for instance, each municipality has its own strategic plan. So it's not a broad-based, capture all kind of an approach. It is really very specific.
And this would be integrated in each
Yes,
of the
exactly.
plans.
So in the long term, we trust that we would have captured those things.
Now this is very timely given the season that we're in, if we're to look specifically at the natural disaster portion. And I want to ask you, Urania, from your experience, what is the typical level of buy-in from parents once they're approached to be able to have this return to happiness structure implemented on their children?
In our experience in St. Lucia, it has been well accepted.
Yeah.
Parents are eager because it also gives them the opportunity to take care of certain things around the house after a disaster. We don't see it as a dumping ground to sort of alleviate the responsibilities from the parents.
It's not daycare.
But then it's a welcome initiative. It has been a welcome program at the Ministry of Education level, at the parents level. But what has gone well for us is that we've just started adding the resiliency component, where it creates the opportunity to engage the parents themselves.
Yeah.
So we bring in a trained psychologist, we bring in a trained counselor, and they actually work with the parents. So the parents, they see the program as an opportunity to help themselves also, how to communicate to their children, how to get the children ready in case of any trauma or any disaster. So it has been a well-accepted program in St. Lucia by the parents.
So there is a preparation mechanism built in as well. It's not only responding to trauma, it's preparing for trauma.
Right, yes, yes.
Good. And Dr. Kasedde, let's talk about the underlying factor here is that children shouldn't be ignored. They should be included in planning, they should be included in recovery process, and most importantly, decision-making processes as well. Let's talk about the importance, and obviously this has been something that UNICEF has been focusing on as well and partnered with respective ministries to be able to do so. Why is it important, once again, let's remind people, to have children engage at all levels and understand and meet the needs that they have?
It's important because children aren't little adults. Children are unique, fully developed individuals with unique needs. And unless we involve children, we really don't know what's going on in their minds. We really can't imagine how they're processing the things they see and experience. And so we have to speak with them. We have to create the space for them to build the trust, in us, and the trust that we truly are interested in hearing what they say. And then we have to respond. So involving children enables us to understand. It enables us to really plan in a way that that meets them where they are. For every child, meet them where they are, and that way we empower them to be able to deal fully with the challenges and opportunities that they face, with the skills that they bring to that, with the attitude that they bring to it, with the abilities that they have. And that's the wonder of approaches like Return to Happiness and the Sustainable Child-Friendly Municipalities. We really are empowering our children to fully engage and thrive.
Yeah. And Urania, let's leave parents who are watching with some tips as to what they can do to help to engage their children before any sort of trauma takes place.
One of the things they can do is basically in preparing for the disaster, they can engage the children. So allow the child to put in some of their favorite toys. Say to them, okay, this is what happens, this is what you do, This is how we can do it, and this is what will happen. It may be a case where we will be separated for a while, but you can go with auntie, and you can go with papa, and you can go with uncle, whatever the term that they use to get the children to feel secure.
Yeah.
You will hear there will be trees falling. Now you explain, go through the process with the child, but just engage the child in preparing. And even at the school, I think it's also done in Belize, that they too also prepare the child and engage the children in preparing if in case pre-disaster.
Yeah.
So it's one way that the parents can do that and listen to the children, because they may want to say something or express themselves. Give them the opportunity, no matter how busy you may be, but give them that opportunity to say something and say, no, mommy, this is what the teacher said we must do and what we must not do.
Yeah.
So this is one way they can engage the children pre-disaster.
Fantastic. I know that's one thing a lot of people don't think about, because they'll say you'll scare them more, but it's better if they're prepared as to what they may potentially be dealing with.
Yes.
Right? Well, I want to thank you all for stopping in today and talking about this recent training that's coming up. You're starting today, of course, and we wish you the best of luck, and definitely hope to see it rolled out as an active part of whether it's municipalities or human development or perhaps cross-cutting in all the ministries to be able to address the needs of children. Thank you once again.
Thank you for having us.
We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by players of the Under-20 Belize team as they get ready for the Central American Female Volleyball Championships. So stay tuned.